Welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Before we get started, I want to tell you about new Egg Life wraps. Egg Life wraps are made with eggs, not flour. Egg Life has the fresh taste you love and the nutrition you need with less than a gram of carbs and 35 calories. Plus, you get 5 grams of protein. Find Egg Life wraps chill-in the refrigerated section or at egglifefoods.com. Use code JILL5 for $5 off your online order. Welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast. I'm Jill Castle, your host, and today I am delighted to have Lacey Mauritz on the show. Lacey is a food-loving registered dietitian, wife, and mom who is ultra passionate about child and family nutrition. Her goal is to engage parents and their little ones in the process of preparing, cooking, and the best part, eating fresh, healthy food. She is a cookbook author and the founder of Storybook Nutrition, a child and family dedicated practice that supports healthy food relationships. She's recently published a 2-part series of parent-child cookbooks, Cooking with Mother Goose, Family-Friendly Meals, and Celebrating with Mother Goose, Snacks, Sweets, and Sips. I've got both of those books right here so we can actually look at them as we're talking. These books are a collection of nursery rhymes and the recipes they inspired. Welcome to the show, Lacey.
Thank you, Jill. It's like a dream come true to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. I know we're going to dive into some of your books. These books are absolutely gorgeous, and I know you are in the kitchen where a lot of the photography happened, as you told me. And tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got where you are today, and why you chose the topics of your book.
Well, absolutely. My journey to becoming a dietitian and certainly to becoming an author was not a direct line. Being a dietitian and a nutritionist is my second career. I started out in the luxury goods industry and fell into becoming a dietitian from a very personal way. I was training for a marathon, and I had a friend say, "Hey, if you really want to enhance your performance, you should go and see a dietitian." I said, "What's that?" And that's how it all began. And I really fell in love with the idea of health being an achievable luxury, and decided to go back to school. And that is how I got to become a dietitian. And it was really my journey as a mom, and you can see my family right there on the cover of my books, that brought me to family nutrition, child nutrition specifically. And while I've always loved cooking, it was through my children that actually the cookbook opportunities came.
So you know, I was looking through your cookbooks, and they're beautiful.
Thanks.
But can you help our listeners understand sort of what goes into writing a cookbook? Because there are so many cookbooks out there. I'm sure it's very hard to stand out, to pick a topic and really stand out. And you definitely have done that with Connecting to the Mother Goose and Nursery Rhymes, which I think is really creative and innovative, because a lot of parents are already reading these books to their children, these stories.
Absolutely.
So what really goes into writing a cookbook?
Time for sure, and a lot of cooking. But really what brought me to the cookbook arena was, like I said, it was my children, and it was I have 2 children. I have a little boy, 2 little boys, and my first child, Axel, was not a very interested eater. Everything else was more interesting to him. So we just started cooking together. I dove into the research because I was a dietitian. I was a little embarrassed that I couldn't have my own child be plump and growing. So we started to cook together, and it was that experience that actually brought the first cookbook company to me. They were an organic baby food company in Chile. That's where we were living. And they said, "We really want to develop a cookbook. So we'd like you to use a few products in our book." And was the only framework I had. So I was really able to take it and run. So I thought, what would I really like myself in a cookbook? And that was things that were practical, things that were fun, and that would always involve my kids. So when it came to cooking with Mother Goose, it's actually my third cookbook. And so I learned a lot in that journey. And the first thing was just where their inspiration comes from. So we read stories at night. We read this treasury of nursery rhymes. And lo and behold, so many are about food. I said, hey guys, let's go down to the kitchen and see, like, what did Peter Pumpkin Eater, like, I wonder what that's like. And we started messing around, and 2 years later, I have this book. So that the real thing is really being authentic to yourself, your true self, and food that you want to eat, food your family wants to eat. I wasn't interested in creating separate meals for my children. You talk about that a lot on your podcast and in your books about having choices on the table, but things that everyone want to eat.
Yeah.
So we started there.
One of the reasons, I don't have a lot of dietitians on the show. We were talking a little bit about this before we got started, but I like to bring a lot of different experts on the show. And one of the things that really drew me to you was the fact that you tied your cookbooks to nursery rhymes, and the fact that you sort of were able to parse out some really creative recipes and tie them to some of the nursery rhymes in the book. Can you give us, just because the audience can't hold the book like I can, they can't run through this, but give us some ideas of some of the nursery rhymes you've highlighted in here and some of the recipes that you've tied to them, just to give the audience a little sense of what's in there.
100%. So let me take you maybe through how I sit down and try to develop a recipe. So everything starts with reading their rhymes. Why? Like, that's the together time I have with my children. And so I'm trying to extend that together time into the kitchen, into the closeness in the kitchen, and to a better relationship with food. So I'm reading the rhyme, say it's Humpty Dumpty. So the first thing I think about in the rhyme is, who are my main characters? So we have this egg character. It doesn't say he's an egg, but the whole world thinks of him as an egg. He's sitting on a wall, and we know he falls off, right? So, okay, I've got an egg. I have a wall. Like, what kind of walls would I want my children to see? What kind of walls do I want your children to see that they might not have experienced before? I thought, well, the Great Wall, right? The Great Wall of China. It is the wall. So I really started with the idea that Humpty Dumpty is sitting on the Great Wall of China, and he's going to fall off. So I've already created kind of this like cultural opening for myself to explore. And so then I think, okay, well, what kind of food might I make with it has like an Asian or Chinese influence that uses an egg? And so I could have done a fried rice, but I really wanted to do egg drop soup because we're dropping those eggs, he cracked. And so that's how that recipe idea started. And then we kind of fool around. Well, how can this be flavorful? How can this be healthy? How can I add another ingredient into this egg drop soup? So then it backed me up. Well, let's make our own stock, because then children get to use not just, chicken bones and stuff, but they also can grab, okay, hey guys, what's in the fridge that looks like, maybe it's at the end of its life. Maybe this celery is a little shriveled, this carrot. We can find the ingredients, find all those colors, put them in the crock pot. Boom, we have this nice rich broth. Then, okay, so we've got these eggs. Well, kids, when they crack an egg, not always perfect, right?
True.
So this is a great practice moment for them, right? To practice cracking their eggs. So cracking an egg into its own separate bowl before it goes in the big pot gives you an opportunity to pick out those shells and teach them a few little tips, like an eggshell will draw attention to another eggshell piece in your yolk. So that helps you kind of scoop it out. And then it's like, well, now we have protein from the egg. We have this great nourishing broth, but I like to incorporate another because, I want some color. Let's incorporate another food group. So we made this, because we were in Chile, this really interesting, it's called pebre. It's a pico de gallo type tomato and onion, cilantro, a little salsa. But let's put that in there to give it a little brightness. And then we have this kind of cultural fusion. And and then they just whisk it up. It's done really once you have those basic ingredients. It's like a 7-minute meal, what could be better on a busy night?
Exactly.
So does that illustrate a little bit how I went from Humpty Dumpty to
egg drop soup?
Egg drop
yes,
soup?
Absolutely. I love the way you think this through. This episode is brought to you by Egg Life Wraps. Egg Life Wraps are made with eggs, not flour. Egg Life Wraps have the fresh taste you love and the nutrition you need with less than a gram of carbs and 35 calories, plus 5 grams of protein. So say goodbye to flour and hello to Egg Life, the perfect wrap. I personally have used it as a quesadilla with melted cheese in the middle, or as a sandwich wrap with tuna and fresh veggies chopped up. Delicious. Find Egg Life chillin' in the refrigerated section or at egglifefoods.com. Use my code Jill5 for $5 off your online order of $25 or more. Give us a few more examples if you can.
For everyone out there, when I developed most of the recipes for this cookbook, we were living in Santiago, Chile, which is in South America. We were there for my husband's job, and my boys were really little. We moved there when Axel was about 8 months old, and Rex came shortly thereafter. So we were walking distance from the weekly farmers market. So I used to go down with this double stroller to the farmers market. We would just look what's there. There's a lot of fresh local produce in Chile and here in the States as well. And so we would pick out things that were in season. So at the time we were reading, I was really looking for something for Little Boy Blue. And I don't know if you know the rhyme, little boy blue, blow your horn, the cow's in the meadow, the sheep's in the corn. Where is the boy who looks after the sheep under the haystack, fast asleep? So here I have this kind of idea of this farm setting. The rhyme talks about corn. And there it is. We have corn and blueberries, because he's Little Boy Blue, right? Those are seasonal ingredients that actually come together, both together in the summer. So pairing, if you're developing a recipe or just looking in your fridge, what do I have? Looking at things that become ripe at the same time they're usually good flavor marriages. So taking the fresh corn, taking the blueberries, okay, this is pretty, let's create a kind of a salad. So I've had some feta, we have some lemon juice, some olive oil, some fresh herbs, and there's Little Boy Blue's corn salad.
Very nice. Very nice.
Maybe I would love to give an example of perhaps something from Celebrating with Mother Goose, because that book's a little bit different. It has it's snacks, sweets, and sips. Why? Because those are important parts of our lives, right? Those are important times of our day, time for celebrating, but also what we eat after school, perhaps, or in the middle of the day. And so I wanted to include some recipes that really use whole food ingredients, but are not, diet food at all. Apple pie and a strawberry ice cake. And so those came about. Apple pie is from a rhyme about apple pie. So less creative there. Okay. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, literally right there. But that process of making a pie was intimidating for me, and I cook all the time. And so I really wanted to, in that recipe, break down the steps so that my littles and the parents out there could learn how to accomplish something like that. So I'll choose, the boys help choosing the apples, depending on the age of your child, peeling the apple or not, then, making it into the rich filling. So when you cook with real ingredients and real love, you're making something like pie, not necessarily an everyday food, but it's got cinnamon and vanilla and none of the stuff that, no preservatives. It doesn't have to sit on the shelf. You're going to eat it.
Right.
So there's like a pictorial in that one. How do you roll out the dough? What are the steps so that it looks nice? And practice does get better. So.
I am not a pie baker for that very reason. I'm totally intimidated by the crust. I'll make a crumble any day.
I will invite you to turn to the pictorial in that book and see a step by step assembly
Yeah.
line, so to speak, of a pie.
Yeah. So I'm sure, like, as you looked at Nursery Rhymes, I don't know that I would have made the connection between recipes and food and nursery rhymes. But as you pointed out, I think I was reading in Cooking with Mother Goose that you were surprised to learn that there were so many food connections or references to food in the nursery rhymes. Number one, about how many nursery rhymes do you showcase, would you say, in each book? And then,
I think that, go ahead,
and then
please.
I was going to ask you, what were some of the more challenging, I mean, Little Boy Blue was probably a pretty challenging one, but what were some of the more challenging rhymes to come up with recipes?
So that's a great question. So I spent like a couple of months just really digging through all these nursery rhymes, household tales, Mother Goose, not Mother Goose, and so a lot of the food ones come up, and that's, if you think about where these rhymes come from, I mean, they've been around for generations and generations. They teach little life lessons, or they teach rhyming and language development, of course, but they're silly and they're fun, and they're for kids. And so that's something kids start to explore the world of food and start feeding themselves. I mean, right around 6 months old. So to be relatable, I think that's how food kind of worked its way into our nursery rhymes. And I think I have about, I say 70 between the two books. And some of them were, like I said, easy. Apple pie, boom, got it. Know what I'm going to make here. The Muffin Man. Clearly, we're going to do some muffins, but maybe we'll do them a few different ways. One of my most fun rhyme and recipe challenges was a very simple rhyme: 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, 4, 5 potato, 6 potato, 7 potato more. And I wanted to kind of have a counting rhyme, or counting recipes, to kind of mirror that way that the rhyme just kind of builds, right? So we have 4 different recipes for the potato one. Potato fried rice, a soup that has potatoes and lettuce, which sounds silly, but that is like a great way to refresh those lettuce leaves that might be on the edge. And then, of course, some French fries. But it really wanted to include food that would be interesting for the parents to eat as well, right? So when Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, I didn't want to make pickles. I wanted to do something a little more interesting to open, my children's minds and the minds of their friends and their friends to other stuff. So we do, it's a romesco sauce. It has bell pepper in it and tomato, and it's this delicious kind of salsa. It comes from Spain, with hazelnuts and almonds, and you can put it over fish, but we serve it over asparagus because that beautiful red and green combo. It's one of my favorites. It's on the cover of Cooking with Mother Goose. I like it so much.
I can see it. I'll show. I don't know if everybody can see it, but you there you are on the cover with the romesco sauce and the asparagus.
Exactly. Little Miss Muffet, she's having her curds and whey, and curds are, there's leftover pieces of cheese, not particularly glamorous. So we have a lemon tree. We live in Florida now, and in Chile we also had a lemon tree, which was so fun. But you have lemons when you have lemons, and then you have none. So I had all these lemons. So I started making lemon curd as presents. And I said, lemon curd, curds and whey. So I ended up doing a little crepe flat pancake that you can put some lemon curd in, and then you can have it flat. You can fold it, you can roll it. So many different ways for the kids to interact with the food.
Really great. Really great. So creative, Lacey. Really. That's what really drew me to you when I learned about your cookbooks. I thought this is just probably one of the most creative ways to engage with children and cook with children. But also, I was looking through the recipes. You have a lot that appeal to parents. I mean, there was a lot in there that appealed to me. Take us through how you've laid out the book so that it makes it really easy for parents to know what their children can do with the recipe and, how you really just sort of laid out the ingredients, the instructions, what to watch out for, what children can do, can't do.
Absolutely. So this is something where I've really matured, I think, as an author over time, where I've really, and going back to that same heart of like, what's going to be practical, what's going to be fun, what's going to be safe, and what's going to taste good, right? If it's not fun, if it's not safe, and it's not tasty, we're not going to do it, right? What keeps, when I decided to lay out the book, I did all the recipes, and I said, okay, let's get organized. So first of all, I don't know, you have the books right there. They're pretty heavy. If it was one book, I don't think a child could lift it straight up, so I wanted to break it into two. And for me, it felt, so the chapters, for example, good morning, breakfast foods, right? We start our day with breakfast every day. That's our opportunity to have something really good and bookend the day for our children. Then we know we're going to see them in the morning. We know we're going to see them in the evening. Let's get them out the door with something that's going to be tasty and give them the right energy for the day. But then I didn't necessarily feel that it was relevant in modern times to say lunch, dinner, etc. So I wanted to break it up a little bit differently so that when you looked at the chapter, you had an idea what was in there. So we have tasty veggies. Okay, that's going to be a bunch of vegetable dishes. We've got Slurpee soups. So we know soups are in there, pastas and grains. So, and also those are like kind of kid accessible, right? A veggie. Okay, I know what that is more than I might know what like a side dish is or an accompaniment. Right. And then when it came to, I have all the meats because I have all the, I have all the kind of those meaty proteins together, fish, chicken, pork, steak. And then when it came to the other one, well, so those were all the family-friendly meals. I said, look, here's the real heart of, what I like to do with my children. So, the cooking together. And so cooking together is huge. So each recipe, it was really important to me that the children were able to be involved. And I'll give a tip to mom and dad at home or grandma, whoever is reading the book. Like when you're going to cook with your child or a little person, do it at a time when you feel relaxed and you have a little bit more time because, it takes time to perfect these things, but kids can do so much more than we think. And that's what I really learned. So even my boys, when I started the whole process, Rex was 2.5, okay, little, but he could do things like pick the basil leaves off the stem. He loved to spin the salad in the salad spinner. Scrubbing a potato was like, hooray, I get to do that. So things that you might not think of as being particularly glamorous, they love to do. So I tried to call out those actionable items in every single recipe. My children, and I don't know about yours when you were growing up, they don't necessarily want to be involved from like the very beginning to the very end, right? That's too long. They want to come in, they want to help, or do something else, and they want to come in, they want to help, and they want to go do something else. And then when it all comes out on the table, hey, Dad, try this. I made this. Oh, look, see that? That's a basil leaf. Or Mom, I ate all the basil leaves when I was pulling them off the stem. We need more. That happens a lot. If they're doing something where they need, they're doing blueberries or there's chocolate chips or there's even lettuces, you might want to have more around in your kitchen and your pantry because they tend to eat it as they go.
Which is a beautiful thing, right? It's a great way to allow children to try new foods without the pressure of sitting at the table and having to try them. It's sort of a natural way for them to sort of get their hands on food and experience all the different sensations and the taste.
Get all the 5 senses in precisely. So when you open my book, for those of you at home, you'll see that every rhyme is illustrated because it's really important. Kids are visual. My children couldn't read when we started, so it was important that the book was colorful, vibrant, and just like, I guess, I would like to maybe compare it to how, Jill, when you talk about to parents, it's really important to keep a feeding routine and a schedule. So I thought it was really important that the pages were laid out really similar so that, again, you set that expectation, you know where to find things, they know where to look for their kids' can activity. The parents, really important for you guys with safety we talked about, right? So at the top of the recipe, I always say, like, is it gluten-free? Is it dairy-free? That might be important to some people, especially if you have like celiac disease or a lactose intolerance. But also the 8 most common
Yeah.
allergens. Like if my recipe contains one of those, that's called out right away, so that it's clear to the parent: is this safe, or is this going to be? Do we need to modify this recipe somehow? And then so that's there always at the top. I put in the beginning of all of my cookbooks because it's really helped me as a mom, but it's helped families that I've worked with, all over the world. A little bit of a nutrition guide, a feeding guide, kind of how do you build that framework of trust, both in the kitchen, but also in that food relationship. Where do you share control? Where do you create the balance? Where do you give the opportunities? I try to lay that out in as few words as possible, with as many pictures as possible, so that parents can really understand about the planning, the preparing, and the serving of food. I will say that I have nutrition nibbles on, which are they were probably super fun for me to write. So a nutrition nibble is my way of telling y'all why should I feel good about feeding this to my family? What is it about the pumpkin or the nut or the style of this that's going to nourish my family? I get the question all the time from Maxwell. Hey, Mom, why is this good for me? Why should I have this? This carrot or this egg or these noodles. And so I included that so that parents can feel good and really kind of understand how we're kind of building this more balanced plate, this mixed nutrient profile. Yeah. And then, of course, you have the mouthwatering photos, right? Because I said it has to be tasty. So we eat with our eyes for sure. And so if children are reading this book, whether you're reading it together for the nursery rhymes or you're turning the page and looking at it like, oh, what do we want to eat? Let's look at these pictures. Y'all can see what's in there. And I'll promise you that that's the real food. So when I was making these recipes and doing the photo shoots with Lorena, who's a very talented food photographer, and certainly enhances the look of the dishes with her artful eye. Everyone came over. All our friends would come over, and it was like this big potluck dinner. So the food that you see on the pages was the real food that I really prepared. No glue and no props underneath it. That's the dish. Yeah. And of course, I took a little more time to cut things more carefully for the photo. Your food will look like this when you're done.
Yeah,
too.
That's great. That's great to know about. Let's talk about, let's segue into some of the benefits around cooking with children. And we've kind of touched on a little bit of them, but just as a dietitian, as a mom, as a cookbook author, you've chosen to focus your cookbooks on cooking with children. So tell us, or let's share with the audience what you see as the top 3 or so benefits in preparing food with children.
Absolutely. I would say my top 2 right out of the gate. One is just that together time, that enhanced bond that deepens between parent and child, of the collaboration, the cooperation, taking turns, helping each other. Those skills that really kind of build their emotional intelligence and their ability to manage expectations, learn behaviors, understand social values, but also a little bit more about their culture and their relationships. So when you cook with your child, whether it's from my cookbook or from your family recipe, that's a moment of sharing about your family or maybe grandma's culture, etc. So I would say that kind of emotional intelligence would be a big one. And then when we do a recipe, and my recipes are all numbered for the steps, because as a mom, I need to know what step are we on. And with the children, it teaches them sequencing and math. A lot of times when people want to cook with their children, they pre-cut, they pre-measure, and they have it all ready to go. And if your child's really small, that might be the best way to go. But if you can, let them do that exploration. Let them count the cups. Let them practice that math, and gain those skills, which just translate into more confidence in their own abilities. So there's that. But at the end, the reason I started cooking with Axel and then I continued to cook with Rex is because it helped them be interested in the food, right? They were less picky. They were more willing to try new things. The food that your child chooses or has helped to prepare is so much more inviting than a food you mandate they eat. And so that's really, those are my 3 big takeaways.
Yeah. I remember, I guess my 4th child, my son, who is now 19, he was really the one who did a lot of cooking. And I think that was probably more a reflection on, I had 4 children within 5 years. And the first 3, we were just like, who's on first base, who's on second base? We were juggling and divide and conquer. And it just never seemed like there was any downtime or relaxation. We were always sort of time strapped, getting meals on the table and things like that. But when my son came along, I don't know, things were more relaxed. It was almost like we knew that this is the caboose of the family, and weekends were much more relaxed. And my husband did a lot of cooking with my son, and I remember he started, probably 18 months old, sitting on the top counter with a bowl between his legs and stirring the eggs, with a whisk, just real slow, teaching him not to splash outside the bowl and just, methodically. And that evolved over time. And I remember he was really young. I want to say he was probably 4, when he was standing at the kitchen stove, flipping the pancakes that he had been gradually over the years, learning how to make. And it's such a beautiful process, and it does take patience, but it is a really beautiful process to witness, and the outcome is amazing. I mean, my son's an excellent cook now, and he's motivated. I don't ask him to cook. He cooks when he wants to cook, and oftentimes cooks for us. But what I'm getting to is, what advice or tips do you have for parents who are definitely there are definitely probably some parents out there listening to this show and saying, oh my gosh, my child is going to be that kid that was on the video on Facebook who was lunging at the flour and shoving the sugar in his mouth. And it was a really funny video. But it was sort of really highlighting the mess and the craziness that it can be when cooking with children. So what advice or tips would you have for parents who are like, oh no, I don't even want to get into that. I don't have any patience for that.
So I know the video you're talking
so
about.
Funny.
And certainly we've had a few, moments where the lid of the, mixer wasn't on and, flour went everywhere. But my advice is there's a couple of things that I think really help for a successful experience in the kitchen. One is starting simple, right? So keep it simple. For example, one of the things that my kids love to make, and now they make on their own, honey mustard. Okay, it's not some fancy thing, but they get the honey, they get the mustard, and they get mayonnaise, and they squeeze, and they scoop, and they stir, and then boom, they want to dip anything into it. If there's carrots, it's carrots. If there's broccoli, it's broccoli. If there's chicken fingers, it's chicken fingers. But something simple that's easy to be successful, right? If you get a little too much honey or too much mustard, or too much mayonnaise, it doesn't really matter, right? That's an easy fix. And they can then use their critical thinking skills. They can stir and they can taste and say, Or then you might say, I think there's enough honey in there, boo. Let's cut the brakes on the honey. But that gives them an opportunity to feel successful, and success builds success. The other thing, and that really helps for sure, and I have a few here, are while most of the stuff in your kitchen, a lot of it is very usable. Like I said, in each recipe, I have this call out, kids can. So these are some of the things that I like to have around. So like a whisk that's not so tall.
And it's small too. It's a smaller whisk.
Yeah, nice and small. Okay, that's because their hands are small, right? I have a kid's chef knife. Okay, it's plastic. It's still sharp. I mean, this can cut an apple and it's serrated. It can cut a tomato, and But having these like smaller things or kid-friendly things, one, keeps everybody safe, right? Because a cut finger or a burnt hand like ends the fun of cooking so fast. Also, like shorter
tongs.
Tongs, thank you. So they can flip stuff.
I love tongs.
And
one of my favorite kitchen utensils.
Perfect. And then like this here is a wooden mallet, but a wooden spoon works just as well. So things that kids can do, like Rex. Okay, Rex and Axel are quite different. Axel is my oldest. He's a little more methodical, a little more calm. He approaches things with a little bit more patience. Rex is like, let me in. I don't want to be left out. So when we have things like nuts, Rex gets to bash them, right? We put them in a Ziploc bag and he gets to go to town, right? Perfect. Thanks, buddy. Also, so some kid-friendly things. And then like, you know, whether you have a chair or sometimes some people have, I do because I teach other families how to cook, like those little stages where the kids, it's almost like a stand-up
platform type
platform where, and then that way they're secure when they're at the counter.
Yeah.
Okay. So that really helps being successful. And then what also is successful is knowing what they should not participate in. And so like in my book, for example, I have like underneath what the kids can do, what the parents need to watch out for. Like these are things that could be dangerous, right? Like a hot stove or a sharp blade of the vegetable grater or something. Like, hey, be aware of this. Or this, when you cook this dish, the oil might splatter. This is a good time for the kids to leave the kitchen and do something else to help the family transition to the table, like set the table. So that can really help with success. Kid-friendly instruments, simple recipes, and knowing when to say, I got this, bud. Go do something else.
How often do you cook with your kids? Is it something you do every day or just a week or once a week or two? Or
So it was every day for a long time, especially in Chile, because there was just, I didn't have there were no convenience foods that were good enough, that were tasty, that were accessible, and that were helpful for my children. So and lunch was a big, culturally a more significant meal of the day. So we always, so a lot of times they would help me with lunch, and they were littler, right? Not in school. Now that they're in school, we do stuff. They tend to help me with little things during the week, off and on. And then on Sundays, and if you are ever on my Instagram, which is at Storybook Nutrition, I have a reel of like breakfast with the boys, and that's them making breakfast with me, or teaching other kids out there how to make, French toast, or we made, muffins. We made muffins from a mix one time. Like it doesn't always have to be from scratch. Right. It's great when you can, but they can also help in the other parts. So look at the back of this package. What do we need? The 2 eggs are in the picture. I don't know. There's a glass full of something. Maybe it's oil. Maybe it's water. Mom, take a look. So I cook with them, I would say 3 or 4 times a week.
Great. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I really love what you've done with these cookbooks, and I'll try and hold both of them up here. But can you let our audience know how to get in touch with you, how to find your books and purchase them, and anything else you'd like parents to know before we sign off?
Oh, Jill, I'd love to. So my website is Storybook Nutrition, the name of my business. And if you go to storybooknutrition.com, you'll find not only my books for sale, but also a recipe library where you can get a kind of a taste and a feel for how the books are. So, for example, you can see other what we're reading right now, or what I'm reading with the kids, and then recipes that I've imagined from those. So you can kind of get a sneak peek. So storybooknutrition.com, I sell my books. They're also on Amazon. And if you're local to Jacksonville, then they're in some brick and mortar stores around here. But also there's a platform called the W Marketplace. It's for women-owned businesses. And so all of the products and services that they sell are women-owned to promote gender equality and kind of close that gap. So I sell through them as well. So Amazon, Storybook Nutrition, and the W Marketplace. And then you can find, if you want to write me, I'm Lacey, Lacey, at Storybook Nutrition, but you can also write Mother Goose at Storybook Nutrition, and because I know her. So
very good.
Sometimes people write me with ideas of like, hey, we're reading this, or can you help me think of a recipe? Or
awesome.
And so that gives me some extra inspiration.
Is there another book coming from you, or are we holding steady for a while?
Well, I just finished up a kind of a Spanish version of Cooking with Mother Goose called Cocinar con Mama Gallina, which really means cooking with Mother Hen. But I really wanted to give back to the Spanish community and the Latin American community that kind of nurtured my cooking and nurtured my children as because we were a young family there. And so I created a similar style book, but with rhymes from all over Latin America, which are illustrated by a young Chilean artist named Martine. And so that's an ebook because distribution for the Spanish-speaking community is a little bit more complicated. So that's an ebook that's available on my site also, and on the W Marketplace also. So if you have friends that habla español, you can in fact find that book. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, so storybooknutrition.com, Lacey at storybooknutrition.com, or Mother Goose at storybooknutrition.com. Lacey, thank you so much for coming on The Nourished Child today. I know that lots of parents out there will be scrambling to get your books and your cookbooks, because I think inherently parents know that part of raising healthy, well-nourished children is not only getting them to eat the food, but getting them to embrace and engage and work with food. Because I always say, once they launch, you're not cooking the meals for them anymore. They need to know how to cook their own meals, and hopefully, balance well-nourishing, healthy, nutritious meals with all the other stuff, fun foods out there that they want to eat. So I know that a lot of parents will find a lot of value in this. So thank you for sharing your time with us today.
Well, thank you, Jill. I really appreciate it. I hope that anyone that has any questions or ideas reaches out.
I'm sure they will. Would you like to win a copy of Lacey Mauritz's cookbooks, Cooking with Mother Goose and Celebrating with Mother Goose? I am giving them away today on the podcast, and here's how you can enter to win. Go to Apple Podcasts, look up the show, The Nourished Child. Then scroll down and you will see an area where you can rate and review the show. Ratings are those 5 stars. You can give the show anywhere between 1 and 5 stars. Obviously, I'm going to encourage you to give it a 5-star review. Then, to review the show, you actually type in a sentence or two that showcases your feelings about the show. It will ask you for your name. Some people put in their real name, some people put in their first name, some people just put in an alias type of name. But remember the name that you put in, because that's how we're going to know who wins these 2 cookbooks. So I'm actually giving 1 cookbook to 1 winner, a second cookbook to a second winner. So you have 2 chances to win. So again, head over to Apple Podcasts, look up The Nourished Child, rate and review the show, and we will pick a winner on September 16th. Good luck, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.